Welcome to Anything Cricket. Let's talk. Well, welcome to our special live show where we are going to be talking about women's cricket. There's been a lot of talk about it in various chats and so on recently, and that's mainly because the regional competition is on. We've had the 50 over, we're now in the midst of the T20, and the passionate cricket lovers can't stop talking about the women's game. And we're going to take a close look at it in this episode. Where are we in women's cricket? Where should we really be in women's cricket? And how do we get there? I'm not going to ask Terry Innes that to start off the show because he's only here because he was on his way to basketball and got lost, and we decided to let him join us. Basil Butcher is here all the way from the US. Hartley Reid, the most passionate cricket lover, women's cricket lover that you will find. And of course, Dayton Smith is also here. But before we get into the nitty gritty of the actual cricket, Basil, we're going to offer condolences to you as a Guyanese in the crowd, to you and the Guyanese people, following that very recent tragedy in Guyana that claimed the lives of several secondary school girls.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this has been a very sad moment for the Guyanese nation, both abroad and at home. This tragedy, in one sense, reminds me of going way back to the late 70s with the Jonestown situation. To see reading the accounts of young people locked in a burning. I could imagine. So again, thank you for your kind words to the Guyanese nation.
Okay, and well, we've also got Dayton Smith, as I said. Dayton, I know you're very passionate as well about this thing called women's cricket.
Good evening, Philip. I am indeed, and good evening to all our viewers. Glad to be with you.
Well, welcome once again, Hartley Reid.
And good greetings to you, Philip, and my friends on the panel, and all the persons viewing in this program. We hope we can do justice to your topic today.
Well, it's a topic that has been causing lots of discussion in various places. And who better to start the ball rolling than you, Hartley?
But I'm honored. Dayton will tell you that in our youthful days, we were actually opening batsmen at some stage in our life. So the opening of the innings is not anything new to me. But you ask, where are we? And we are in the abyss. Our women's cricket is in a shambles. We should not be here. That was your second where we should be. For sure, we should not have been here, seeing that just in 2016, we were world champions. We won the world championship along with the men and the under 19 boys, who to this day we are still on. I don't think there's another test playing territory that can claim all three championships in the same year, but we have it. And after that, it is clear that Cricket West Indies decided that was enough for us. We were given the mandate by ICC to be responsible for women cricket. Hitherto, they were doing their own thing. They had their own administration, and one would have thought that, seeing that the Cricket West Indies had the expertise in running men's cricket for so many years, it would have been a slam dunk, as my man from America would say. It would have been and Terry, oh yes, Terry, it would have been a slam dunk for the Cricket West Indies to just pick up the mantle and go with it. But indeed, the past went out of bounds because our women are absolutely the laughing stock of the region, the world. Our cricketers are nowhere to be seen competitively on the international stage. And we have been given the privilege this year, this month, to watch our females for the first time for a long time. The Cricket West Indies have found a window in its busy itinerary to host the female regional, both Super 50 and the T20 Blaze. And there is the only blaze you can see is that the cricket is in a blaze, a misery. There is absolutely no joy for our cricket lovers, all of us who enjoy cricket, who, despite what we are seeing, we turn on every day still to watch it. And we are seeing a pathetic display by the females, all because the rulers, the persons who are charged with the responsibility for our cricket have done little. I do not want to say they have done nothing, but they have done very little to advance female cricket in our region.
Well, Harley, after that opening, and in addressing the aspect of it, where should we be? I suspect that Derek Innes may figure that he should be at basketball, because
for sure.
he certainly painted a picture of doom. But if that is how you see it, so be it. Dayton Smith, another passionate cricket lover.
Yeah, Philip, I'm not going to dwell too much on where we should have been or what could have been done. We certainly missed some opportunities. In terms of where we are, I think the simplest way I can state it is this. Right now, the structures and the systems we have in place are taking way too long to develop our cricketers, and that has been the case probably for the last 10 years or a little bit more. To illustrate what I'm saying, if you look at the West Indies players over the last 10 years, I can find at least 6 batters who have played for 10 years or longer and have averaged under 20, which suggests to me that whatever we have in place is not doing enough to develop those players to the level where we will compete for trophies internationally. On the bowling side, the same thing applies. We have some bowlers who have been with us for a very long time, and if you look at their performances now as opposed to 10 years ago, some of them have declined, partly because of age, but I also think it has to do with the structures we have in place and the systems we have in place. So the short answer is what we have in place is taking way too long to develop our players. And at this point in time, we are a little worse off than we were a little while ago, in the sense that we had a sort of a hiatus there where we were not producing players to come into the team. In the last few years, the only players that have come into the team have been Cherry-Ann Fraser, Ramarat from Trinidad, and Williams from Jamaica. I might have missed 1 or 2, but we've only had a very few players coming. You know, the good news about where we are, and I've been very pleasantly surprised to see that in the current competition that is taking place with both the 50 over T20, I've seen some emerging talent, and that's a good sign. So that's where we are, and where we need to be is to get our structures and systems altered in such a way that we can develop those players much faster, simply because we have a lot of players in our team who are on the wrong side of 30. And we need to get these younger players up and running and able to perform at the national level in a much shorter time than we've ever done in the past. Otherwise, we'll find ourselves in a very difficult situation.
Basil, you brought up a perspective as well, or you may have the same views, but you have a lens you don't necessarily have because you see the American side of it firsthand.
Yeah, I started following women's cricket very closely in 2008. That's when the ICC mandated associate nations also have a women's program, and I started coaching women's cricket back then. So I started to become more familiar with the West Indies teams of that time. And I would agree with Hartley, or I would say our women's cricket the region is in a crisis situation, but our cricket as a whole is in crisis. And the women's cricket, because it was never as developed as the men, will feel, you know, like they say in the United States, we have a saying, when the larger economy catch a cold, the black community catch pneumonia, right? So is a similar analogy with the women's cricket vis-a-vis the men. And I agree with Dighton. We don't have the systems in place. The question I would ask is this: what was being done in the past that we were able to develop women cricketers that could compete on the world stage? And maybe it's similar to what's going on with the men. At that time, they could, because as Dighton correctly said, I came to Barbados in 2011 on a with a U.S. women's team for a camp. And while we were there, the regional women's tournament was being played. So we stayed at the same hotel as Jamaica, Trinidad, and Barbados teams. And we were able to see the final, and we played a couple games against Barbados second 11, and that's when I met Haley Matthews for the first time. She was 12 or 13 at the time. That Barbados, I would say the second 11 that they had that played against us would beat most of these teams that are playing in the tournament today. And this was just 12 years ago, right? And as Dighton correctly said, that was when the first time I saw the Knight sisters. They just started playing for Barbados. Cornell was just started playing for Barbados. Nation was playing for Jamaica. Obviously, Stephanie Taylor was playing for Jamaica, right? Campbell was playing for Guyana, right? Anissa Muhammad was playing for Trinidad, and obviously West Indies, all of them. Now we fast forward 12 years later, and those are still the same names in the mix. Whereas we have seen worldwide, players have come into international cricket from other nations and have gone past us. These are women who have started playing international cricket after those players that I just named, and they've gone past us. I remember the days where South Africa couldn't compete with us. Pakistan couldn't compete with us at all. You know, now those teams are right nipping at our tails or beating us. And I just want to end with this point. Back in 2017, looking at that World Cup where we didn't get out of the group stage, the 50 over World Cup in England, you could see the fissures clearly then, because they brought in some players to play in that tournament that were nowhere of international standard. And look at Guyana, for example, and from a territorial basis. Sherry-Ann Fraser's in the team, but she's playing as a batter. And we know she's a fast bowler. Because she has a back injury, yet still they picked Sherry-Ann Fraser to come to play our premier tournament, pretty much not fully fit, and can't exhibit the skills which she got picked to play for the West Indies.
Well, Terry, the other night I saw LeBron James attempting a lob to set up a dunk. Are you going to bring that similar brilliance to your opening statement?
No, I don't think. I can't really call my name and LeBron James' name in the same sentence, really.
Okay. I think you probably know a bit more about cricket than he does, though. So that's
yeah, for sure. But I can't give you a history lesson like the other panelists, right? But I know women's sport, and I know if you are going to do the same things that you're doing for the men, you will fail at the women. And I think that is where we fall down, or where we fell down with the women. And also, I think that our cricket on the whole needs some sort of impetus, some innovation, some new thinking. And I think that's where we struggle. It's about numbers also. Now, the men had more numbers than the women. So You know, you could drop a fella here, you could drop bring another fella, but the women, you know, the number's short. So somebody get dropped, they get 2 years older, and you bring them back at 35. You know, that shows a lack of what Dayton was saying, lack of your systems and your structures.
Gentlemen, when I listen to the lovers of women's cricket discussing the sport, and that happens a lot, especially when matches are being played. As I said earlier, we had the 50 over competition, which Barbados won, and now we're in the midst of the T20. So there's a lot of chat around in the chats about women's cricket. And there's an aspect of it that tends to amaze me. I would hear one of the contributors or participants make a comment something like, she needs to play off the back foot. She needs to learn to, she needs to bowl it googly. She needs to do this and she needs to do that. And the question that goes through my mind each time, and it puzzles me, but has anyone ever shown her these things? And has anyone set up an environment where, having been shown, you can practice and develop these things? Or is it that you're supposed to acquire these things just like that? Now, that may seem a strange comment coming from me, maybe, but when I reflect on men's cricket and coming up as a youngster playing cricket, I played cricket, believe it or not, with people like Dayton Smith. I say believe it or not because I think Dayton would create more conversation about cricket than I probably would. But the fact of the matter is, in those days, when Dayton can bear this out, I'm sure, cricket was everywhere. Everywhere. You know, you played cricket before school, at break time, lunchtime, after school. And in fact, I remember, I think it was, what was it? Powell on a commercial on television talking about playing late into the evening and playing all day, and your mom calling you and you don't want to go and eat because you want to play. That was the environment that was cricket many years ago. And while it's not the same now, I would suggest that you still get guys playing cricket from time to time. There's a lot of men playing cricket. There are a lot of men playing. The women don't have that background. They don't have that environment. What happened with the men, the Dayton Smiths of this world, the Basil Butchers, the Terry Ennises, even although he didn't make the Barbados team coming from combined schools, the Hartley Reeds. What helped them was something called incidental learning. That means that you're learning things, even although nobody is setting out to teach you in a structured way. The women, certainly in the Barbados environment, don't have that. You gotta teach them. And I'm not so sure that the experts around cricket really appreciate and understand that. I would not like to think I understand it being an educator. I would like to think that it should be fairly obvious to anyone, but I may be wrong.
Well, if I may jump in on that, I think you hit on the major point I felt I needed to make tonight, and it is this. You refer to it by a fancy educational term as incidental learning, but in its most basic form, people learn hand-eye coordination by repetition, and you do it often enough, even without coaching. Your brain naturally starts to process some things about how to do it better. And we talked about where our cricket is, and one of the issues with our cricket at the moment is, and it relates to what I was saying to you earlier about how long it takes to develop a cricketer in Caribbean. On the women's side, it's not great on the men's side, but on the women's side, is the fact that they play far too little cricket. If you take the Haley Battews of this world, every month almost it looks like Haley's playing in a tournament somewhere else in the world. So she is practicing her craft on a year-round basis. But my question is, what happens after this tournament for, let's say, Geneva Joseph from Trinidad, a very promising little, I think she's 19 or 20 years old, from batter from Trinidad. What are her opportunities to play, to practice, to develop her skills after this tournament is finished? There's far too little cricket available for them to play. As you said, in the Barbados that I grew up in, there was cricket being played every day, at school, in your neighborhood, on the beach, wherever you went, there was cricket, and your natural hand-eye coordination started to develop before you even had any coaching or understood the principles of cricket. But right now, I'm very concerned about how do these West Indies women get more cricket now in any sport, and I know that Terry is a great student of his sport, basketball, in terms of how they develop players. But there's usually a pathway. So if you take men's cricket in the Caribbean, in a lot of the islands, you play cricket in school as a young boy. Then you have an under 15 competition in your territory. You have an under 15 West Indies competition, and under 17 West Indies competition, and under 19 West Indies competition. On the women's side, and I have to give special kudos, by the way, to Trinidad. For many years, Trinidad hosted under 19 tournament, which didn't include everyone in the region. It was very often a tripartite tournament, but the point was that was the only youth cricket being played in the Caribbean. They hosted a tournament that was held by the local association. Barbados was often invited. Outside of that, my question to you is, what happens to Azeda James? How do they get that exposure in terms of competition and learning their craft, learning how to develop innings, learning how to stay at the crease for a long time in match situations, not spending 10 minutes in nets and then the other person rushes in after you? I think one of the things greatly lacking is that opportunity to play more. And I have some ideas on how that can be done. You might prefer me to say them later after people have talked about it, but I'd really like the opportunity at some point tonight to tell you what I think we should do to play more cricket.
We get back to that then. And before we bring in the others on that same theme, let me just pick up where you mentioned Hayley Matthews playing a lot of cricket.
Yes.
No, but my concern really, I don't think that is part of the problem. I mean, everything you said there, you're on point. Don't think I'm disagreeing for a minute, because you are on point. But there's a problem that starts before that. How did Hayley Matthews get to this point?
I will tell you.
One day and become a franchise player.
I will tell you, Philip, and it's a good example to use because it wasn't by way of any structures that were set up for women's cricket. Fortunately, Hayley's father played cricket for the same club I did. And so I was used to every Saturday seeing little Hayley Matthews turn up at the cricket ground and come out there and hit as many balls as she can and harass you on the field because she wanted you to come off so that she could come and sub for you and get the opportunity to field. So she created her own opportunities. Her father helped create them for him. But then beyond that, she went to school and at Harrison College, she played on the boys team. There was no girls structure set up. And therefore she played on the boys under 13, under 15, and under 17 team for Harrison College. So she had opportunities to play cricket constantly throughout her life from 10 years old. And that opportunity is not afforded to many people in the Caribbean. I remember hearing that Stephanie Taylor did the same thing playing the boys team at her school. And that's the issue. These were one-off situations created through personal circumstances, not by way of any structure or system that was set up to facilitate women's cricket. So there are anomalies.
And this is why I'm saying, Dayton, that in the absence of that situation, that personal situation, as you call it, you've got to do it formally. You also left out the fact that Hayley Matthews has a brother who plays cricket every Saturday as well.
Yes.
And as youngsters, they play cricket in the backyard with dad. So you can see how she developed her early skills. The point I'm making is, since we know that most of the women's cricketers don't have that, are you just going to sit down and say it and criticize what they can't do? Or is it about time that somebody put some structure to making sure that things are done? But we haven't really given much opportunity to Basil and Terry. And I really want to hear this basketball to talk cricket. And the American Guyanese are sharing his thoughts.
As I said earlier, the lack of structures or even to, like the example Dayton gave regarding Hayley, find out what did these players do to develop and take those principles and see how you can put them in a systematic way. It's similar to as we discussed earlier, how we grew up in environments in the Caribbean where we played cricket on the street. That's where we learned. We created games that were environments that helped us develop certain skills that coaching can't develop, right? And we played repetition for hours and hours and so on, right? But the problem is the youngsters today are not growing up in that same society. So how do you teach them those same skills that we were able to learn playing what we call informal cricket, to bring it in a systematic way through the pathway? So, you know, that what we call playing cricket the West Indian way would not fall by the wayside. And similarly with the young ladies, the women, what were these women doing, the ones that became really good, and how we now can take those things and put it in a systematic way to allow these girls to and women to be able to develop their cricketing skills by playing enough cricket. Because, you know, as they say, there's the argument is 10,000 hours of whatever skill you need to put in to be a world class. So it's obvious our women are not getting nowhere near those amount of hours of repetition in playing, because as we always say, the only way you get better is the more you play, not sitting on the sidelines. And so the West Indies board, along with its territorial boards, in my view, need to look at women's cricket as a situation where it's in a crisis situation, really crisis situation, and really start and be very urgent in instituting those structures that are necessary to build the cadre of women that are playing cricket in the various territories, as well as the pathway that can help to develop these women cricketers to be world-class players.
Well, I think that everybody said almost everything that was to be said. When I was doing my research about women's cricket and women's cricket in the international women's cricket, I also saw that I got a strategic plan for almost all the other test playing nations. I talked about top class. Even got one for USA and Canada. Just strategic plans for their women's game. And of course, West Indies were nowhere near to be found, right? And they had timelines and what they plan to do and how they get the funding and all that. We can't compete if we don't plan, right? Right now it is about participation. And if you have 15 people as your cadre of international players, you can only pick for those 15. So it's about participation, and we lose the plot when it comes to participation. And although I love the time that I grew up playing cricket in my house, when I hit the house is out, you learn not to cut because the house was at point. So I mean, so those sort of things you learn by best playing. Yeah, but we got to understand that it is not the 70s or 80s any longer, and that we have to put systems to really capture that same sort of informal learning that we had and just put it to use. But the first thing we need for women's cricket is participation. I don't think we understand how to get the participation.
Mm-hmm.
So about 80 or so primary schools in Barbados, I believe. And I know everybody who has a plan for anything wants to go into the school. The beautiful thing about women's cricket is that cricket is already in the schools. Cricket is already, if you want to call it, a national pastime or a national activity. So you are likely to get a better reception going into a school with a cricket proposal than you would if you wanted to bring something that nobody had heard about or that was not yet organized. I would dare say even table tennis. Table tennis has been around for a long time in Barbados. And at the school level, it is nothing compared to even a poor school competition. Now, I'm not saying school competitions are poor. I'm saying even a school competition at its poorest is still better than what table tennis has at the school level. And that's because it's cricket. When people hear cricket, they respond differently to when they hear other things. There may be other sports that may get a similar response to cricket, but not many. So I just set that background because I don't want anybody to tell me that it's not going to work, because I don't mind you telling me that after you try it. Now, I said Barbados, but what I'm suggesting could be attempted anywhere. And it has been attempted and has worked other places. So you go into the 80 schools, going through the proper channels so that you are more likely to get some sort of reception. And if you go into the 80 schools, you've got coaches who are hired by the BCA, and some of them work at Kenson-Nova. And if all of them are focusing on coaching Shea Hope and Ralston Chase, I don't know what it's going to achieve. Some of them have got to be working with the juniors. So you're going to take some of these coaches and you're going to go into the schools and you're going to do some demonstrations and whip up some interest. You're not going to do demonstrations by necessarily demonstrating for defensive. You may do a little kneeling down cricket or take me to, or some creative way of grabbing the children's attention in your demonstration in the school. Let us say out of that you get on average 20 children per school. Well, my math isn't that great, Terry. So 20 children per school out of 80 schools is how many?
It's 1,600.
You sure?
My math's not that great either. But yeah, 1,600 songs would be correct.
But you see, Philip,
Let me finish. I want to put it in its entirety, and I can try to be brief because I know everybody want to talk. So you do that, and you go through the schools, and then you organize maybe in the summer, in the vacation, at a suitable time, some actual clinics or camps where you can still do some fun stuff, but you get to interact more with them. And as you go, the numbers will be reduced. But if you start with 1,600, and I dare say if you start with 800, I would be very shocked if after 6 months, you don't have at least 25. And after you have gone into stage 3, you may end up with 15. And out of those 15, 10 might be decent. And out of those 10, you may find 2 Haley Matthews. And if you do that every year, Terry, Basil, Dayton, and Hartley, you really got some math now to work out how many Haley Matthews you will get every year. So that in 4 or 5 years, and this is only Barbados, you know, if you do that throughout the Caribbean, and the numbers are not going to be the same, but the strategy will be, you have to end up with a bigger pool than you have now. I'll pause there.
I just want to say this quickly before you talk, Hartley, so I don't forget. I think there are 2 elephants in the room that often is not addressed. One being the women are not encouraged to play cricket, right? That's been a problem. And 2, a lot of the coaches are men for the most part, and many of them don't know how to coach young ladies, young girls, right? That's another issue also that is often not discussed. Because you see guys, you got lots of guys who have coached, you know, men cricket, and then when they got to transition to coaching women, they find some difficulty because women and men they're different. So you have to understand certain nuances as a coach, how you're going to approach coaching young girls and women versus how you coach boys and men. And I stop there.
gentlemen, this program tonight has unearthed all of the issues that are affecting regional cricket. But Philip, you just attempted to reinvent the wheel in Barbados, and you know I can talk about
That's why I
Barbados.
said, Hartley, that what I was describing has been tried elsewhere with success. I wasn't suggesting it was something new. It may be new to those in the Caribbean who are just sitting down and watching women's cricket die, but it's not a new philosophy or a new theory. I'm well aware.
I thank you, my friend, because here in Barbados, all of the things that you have identified, primary school cricket, where we have girls playing in the primary Everton Weeks competition with the men. Guyton talked a lot about Haley Matthews. Let me take you back a little further. Shaquana Quinton, Shakira Salmon, the night girls. These are people that who have come up and all of them have one thing in common: Passage Road. We have an academy at Passage Road in the heart of the city where every bus comes down. An academy at Passage Road, which produced every female that right now has worn maroon in the 21st century came through Richard Clark. But not only that, we also have Franklin Stevenson, who has his girls up there at his academy. We have Jason Paris, who joined COVID. And to show you how contrary to what people believe, it does, and you are an educator, and I keep reminding you, you know how to teach. During COVID, Jason Paris took his son. Unfortunately for all of us, he would put it on social media. He took his son and he nets hour after hour. And now his son, Justin, is the next Brian Lara. I don't care who you want to call him. Every time he walks on the field of play and he's around him, he bats and he bowls. And when he's not making a century, he is taking 5 or more wickets. And he was not playing 10 years. All I am saying is that if the persons who pretend to be in charge of cricket in this region were not so small-minded, they would recognize that the business that we are talking about is a business, it's cricket. And if you have an area which is pushing out cricketers like a factory, you do not shut it down. You do not put guards at the rule street to stop you from passing. That's where you go to produce your cricketers, because you made a point, Big Philip. All of the BCA coaches for seniors, they have never looked at a child, never. They do not know what to do. They do not know what to do. And women cricket, Basil made a point, you made a point, David made a point, everybody has made a point. You cannot equate women cricket in longevity with men. So you have to teach the girls how to play. They're not going to play in the road like how we played, hitting houses are out. Because nowadays, the more guys are going to kill you anyhow. You cannot play cricket in the road any longer. So right now, you have to go on the path, on the field of play. But we have the coaches, we have the systems that are there. All it calls for is the will or the knowledge, because they neither do the people have the will and the showing of the knowledge of how to get the women cricket advanced. So what they are doing, they are sitting back and telling you each and every time, look, Barbados just won a competition. Barbados won that. And if you ask the people who are talking, but how Barbados managed to win, they can't tell you. And this is a problem. We have to stop dancing around the issues and call a spade a spade. I sat on the board in the BCA. No, but he will tell you from early, he is not as boisterous, and he's showing he doesn't get on like me because he's Harrison College. But he can tell you the frustrations that we encountered at that board when it came to women cricket. You can imagine that now, as we speak, Barbados won the Super 50, and they're on the verge of winning the T20. And the only 2 girls, that is the only 2 girls that are on contract are two girls that lost their contracts in the Great West Indies, the Night Sisters. Not another one, and not even get a stipend, not even a stipend to pay a bus fare to get to practice cricket. The issue is simple. We have to get rid of the people who are masquerading as persons in charge of cricket and get the people whose interest is in the cricket and not just getting on in front of the cameras and in microphones and making statements that if anyone wanted to cause an issue, we'll challenge them.
Hartley, before the others come in, Norman Puckering obviously has been listening intently and seems to agree with you because he's saying we need a pathway to move forward with women cricket. So what you're saying is not falling on deaf ears, Hartley. But I want to pick up very quickly on something that, and by the way, Hartley, if you're suggesting that Arizonians don't know about aggression, I think Harrison College produced a couple of fast bowlers, so you better do your research there. But on what Basil talked about when Basil said that I think it was Basil who said that most of the coaches are men. Was that you, Basil? Right. And it's not only, imagine your 8-year-old daughter at a school and 4 or 5 or 6 men turn up to do this cricket demonstration. These will be coaches and maybe some youngsters that they may bring with them, maybe more than that. I mean, isn't that enough to intimidate an 8-year-old girl, these 6 big men there? So I'm not only talking about women now as coaches, but women need to get involved. And I don't know, you all may take me to task with it. If you put up a mirror or look at your screen, what do you see, Terry, when you look at your screen?
Yeah,
You see,
yeah, and some women in the background on your picture, really. That's about it.
but I had to get them in somehow. All right, 5 men talking about women's cricket, and this is not the first program that I have organized about women's cricket. And I speak subject correction, but I do not recall ever having a woman, a female, on any of those programs. And there are people who are listening to me now and saying, but that's your fault. No, well, it may be my fault, but it is not for lack of trying. I have issued invitation upon invitation upon invitation to females to be part of this program and other activities about women's cricket. If the women are not prepared to get up and be role models and show the girl, primary school girl at 8 years old, needs to see that what you're trying to show her is relevant to her. 6 men turn up, demonstrate it. She's not going to get the connection. So women's cricket, Hartley, with all the coaching in the world, ain't going nowhere until the women stop being in the background and come out and make a difference.
I want to just jump on that because if you look in the nations where the women's cricket is further along than us, whenever coaches go to schools, they always have a woman with them, a woman player, one of the players, if she's not a coach also, going to the schools because you're going to interest both boys and girls. And the young girls want to see people that look like them, that this is relevant to them also. I have said, why in the West Indies we do not use our women cricketers to be part of that process of encouraging young girls to come and play this game also. The Haley Matthewses of the Stephanie Taylors, etc., etc. These women have to be part of the process of bringing along the next generation of women cricketers in the region, and not just us men. And I just tell you a little story from Bermuda. I remember years ago I was talking with a coach from Bermuda, and we were actually discussing women's cricket, the decline of women's cricket in Bermuda. And what he said in a board meeting, a woman who was on the Bermuda Cricket Board got up and said, women are not supposed to be playing cricket. They're supposed to be in the kitchen, blah, blah, blah. So you even got some of that mentality amongst women of a certain age group. So that's why I said, are these girls being encouraged to play cricket? Because they have not set the environment to encourage them to want to play the sport. It's not easy accessible for them to come and to play cricket. And now today that we see what is great today, we can get to see women playing cricket on TV at high skill. So these young girls can look at these women today and say, oh, I could be like them. And these women are living some very good lifestyles. They're earning some decent money now. So there is value to play the sport, unlike in the past. The parents might discourage their daughter, you got to go to school. Don't worry, this cricket thing.
Basil, following on from that, no, I accept all that you said, but it's not only the female players that can turn up to help with those demonstrations and to show the girls irrelevant. Okay, you've got women who have played cricket and done well over the years, who no longer play at that level, either because they have aged a bit or because they've chosen a different career path and cut short their playing days, maybe late 20s, early 30s, or some maybe 40 or 50 years old or 60 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They're part two, because what they're doing, they're showing that cricket does not stop you from being a teacher, a gym instructor, yard, a doctor, a judge, a mechanic. Cricket does not stop you from doing any of those things. And there are those who will tell you that their cricket background has actually helped them be better professionals.
Correct.
So I think, this is a call by me for women to come up to the woodwork and stop hiding and make a difference in cricket. Then you've got women who are commentators. You've got women who are umpires. Where are these women and how are they being used? Are they willing to be used? Have they been asked? Terry, how do you get that in basketball? How do you get
Philip, I made some notes, to come to the meeting, just to make sure that I'm not lost. I know I could rattle off the basketball statistics without any problem. But I had to do some research with the women and stuff. And all of my notes I could really throw away now because everybody mentioned all my notes. So you could really just let me leave, right?
It just shows that you had to research what we already know.
Yes, I had to go and make sure that I'm not talking rubbish, right? But one of the things that I made a note of is about education and training. And that is education and training and specific training. Because most of I know as in basketball, most of the manuals, most of the cricket, most of the basketball manuals, basketball teachings is geared towards the men, right? And we got to understand that the women are slightly different. Well, some will say more than slightly, but they are different. And that the same coaching methods that you will use with a man, you really can't use with a woman. And you got to understand that, sometimes they may be, you may have a temperament issue, and the same way that you can shout at men or push men, and when I say push, I mean sometimes physically, you might take a man and tell you, go get in this position, or he should be in this position. You got to be careful when doing things like that with women. So when I say about education, I talk about understanding how to coach with females, right? And how to interact with females. You also have to educate the players themselves, because you are saying right now that the players should be going to schools and stuff. And I mean, I had that as a note that there should be ambassadors to the cricket. So all our people that are playing this high level cricket, even at the country level, don't even let us go to like the Haley Matthews, but at the country level, they could go in the schools and with the male coach if they need, and show them, this is where I am and this is how I get there, and get some interest going there. But what has happened though is we assume, And it probably is nature, but we assume that the structures and systems that work for men will be the same structures and systems that will work for women. And that is that will not work. It ain't gonna work today, it ain't gonna work tomorrow, it's not gonna ever work. You really need to pay special attention to ladies, and you got to understand that that if you really want to push women's cricket, you have to push women, not only the cricket.
Something before Dayton comes in to share these ideas that he didn't share earlier. I would think that I'm here trying to think, how successful would the Netball Association be if they wanted to start a boys program? And a bundle of girls turned up at a primary or secondary school to introduce netball to boys. Now, my only challenge with that, Terry, is that I know there's some boys who will go and play just because the girls are there. But so maybe my example may not be the best. But I would think that if you wanted boys to take up netball as a serious sport, they would have to see that it is okay for boys to play netball. So they would have to see guys playing netball. They would probably have to even see, there's a lot of television around now, so they would probably have to see some men playing netball on television. And then they will probably think, oh, well, this is a cool sport. But if they only see women playing, it is unlikely that they may play to get close to the girls, boys being boys, but they're not going to take it seriously. So if you look at the reverse, you're trying to get these girls to play cricket, but it's only guys that turn it up. And if there's a primary school, there's a no-no because they can be intimidated. Because primary school girls are not even accustomed to seeing male teachers, or less all these guys turning up. They're going to be overawed by that, because I think it's fair to say, I don't think there could be too many primary schools in Barbados of any size with more than 10 male teachers. I'm not saying they're not any, but there can't be that many. I go around to primary schools on a regular basis, and there are not many that will have 10 men. And the ones that would have 10 men would be the really big primary schools with an excess of 30 or 40 teachers. So it's a real problem. If you're dependent on men to get girls interested in cricket, it just ain't gonna work. That's it.
Yeah, Philip. For any sport to be successful, there must be a development pathway. Any sport, not just cricket. So you're quite right in all that you said about what needs to happen to get people at school age playing. However, I think we have another problem, and we have to attack both of them with parallel plans. And here's the problem that we haven't addressed so far. If we go into schools now and do all that we've said, it's going to take us another 6 years, let's say, even if we have a real prodigy, to get a player coming with that school system that we can start pushing.
Try to cross it there, but if we don't, it's going to take more than 6. We'll cross it again.
Oh, fine, that's fine. And I will repeat in case you didn't get it the first time. I'm saying we have to do it. The problem is, what do we do for the next 6 years while we're trying to create that player? And the truth is, in a lot of cases, it's going to be more than 6. The reality is that West Indies cricket right now has a number of players who are 30 or older, who are still playing but are declining, and who will come to the point in another 2, 3, 4 years where they just cannot compete at international level. And the question is, what do we do now to be able to compete? As you know, in any sport, even the players who are in there, it is very important to have people challenging for those places in order for them to produce their best. If I am in a West Indies team and I know there's no one challenging and I'm beginning to decline, there's no reason for me to go there and work hard to get my levels back up. I know that I'm an automatic shoe-in. So here's what I'm suggesting in terms of the parallel systems we have to do. And I will come back to addressing the younger players in a moment, but I think we got to start by saying we're watching this tournament, and some good young players are emerging, but I say good in terms of the fact that you can see that there's a future for them if we really develop them properly. But obviously they need that development. They're not there yet. And so if this tournament finishes and they go back to their respective islands and play very little cricket for another 9 months until we find something to do with them again, or for another 6 months until we have a West Indies camp. My contention is that person cannot develop properly. We have a few examples that we can see. One of the players that I know impressed all of us is Janelia Glasgow from the Windwards, when we saw her a year or two ago. Very, very talented young lady. She's been to a West Indies camp or two, and we are watching her now, and we're not seeing that improvement. And I'm not that surprised, because you go to a camp, you come back, and there's nothing. And therefore, it is very difficult for you to build on whatever teachings that you acquired at that camp. So here's my suggestion. The only two leagues that I'm aware of that are competitive in the Caribbean is in Trinidad and in Barbados. And even in Barbados, we only have 3 teams that play in that league. I am suggesting that the Cricket West Indies and the territorial board should sit down and say, let us get the current West Indies players, and let us get the promising players who we should be looking to develop to that level, and get them all playing domestic cricket. And here's what I would suggest. Let's take Zeta James from the Windwards. When the tournament is playing in Trinidad, I think the Cricket West Indies and the Windwards should collectively work out how they're going to share the burden of sending her to Trinidad to play in that tournament. When we get young Saw from Trinidad, finishing the tournament in Trinidad, we should be sending her to play in the league in Barbados. And again, that should be a collaboration between Cricket West Indies and the Trinidad Cricket Board. We always talk about we don't have money, but there are 2 issues I have to say with that. One is this. If I run a bakery, I'm in the business of making bread, and I say I don't have money, then the bakery will never get off the ground. It is my job as a business person to find that money, either by borrowing it or by raising it. And in the case of a person like a young, talented player, one of the ways to raise funds is to say, let's go to the business community and say, I want to associate your name with this young lady. We have a developmental program for her. We're going to send her to Trinidad to play, and then we're going to send her to Barbados to play. Here are the costs. We want a contribution from you. We're going to associate your name with this girl. When she becomes an international cricketer, you will be cited as one of the people who aided her development. I'm just using that as a simple example. My point is there are many ways to raise funds. But the most important thing is we must get those players playing cricket on a regular basis. That's the first thing. The second thing is, no, I can't speak too much about Trinidad, but I know in Barbados, the 3 teams that they had always had qualified, appointed coaches working with them. And it is very important that when we bring players here, and I would bring the West Indies players too. I would bring Stephanie Taylor. I would bring Shadeen Nation. I would bring all of them and say, instead of having 3 teams in a league of Barbados, we'll filter them into a number of teams and play a 5-team tournament. So there's more cricket to be played, and the quality of that cricket will be better because we are bringing players who are slightly more advanced. And we're benefiting those players by the fact that they are playing regular cricket, and we are ensuring that all of those teams are coached by well-qualified coaches. And the final piece of that puzzle is this. We have a West Indies players. I'm not going to call anybody's name to embarrass them. We have a West Indies player who I've been seeing for about 15 years now, getting out driving between point and mid-off, driving uppersley and getting caught in that arc all the time. So when those players come here, there should be communication also with these coaches. There should be an individual plan for each player. So we say to the coach, this player has a tendency to get out driving in the arc, and that same player, by the way, tends to get out caught in the square leg boundary sweeping fairly often. And so when they are here playing in your team, I want you to be working on these issues. So we have you playing more cricket. We have you in a structured environment. We have you with a plan for the weaknesses that we know you have. And what that does is that the players who are already in the setup and the players who are on the verge of getting there are now in a very structured environment in which we are saying we are pressing your development over the next 6 months, 1 year, 1.5, 2 years, so that we can see some measurable development. So that next time we see Janelia Glasgow we see her swinging the ball, we see her moving the ball off the seam, we see her hitting areas better. The point is, there's a plan, and each of those girls has the opportunity to develop within that plan. Not to say, we know you have these weaknesses, go back home and think about it, but to put you in an environment where you can play, you can develop, you have people that you are accessible, who are trained to say, here's how I can help you. And they must have the facilities when they come here or when they go to Trinidad to be able to go and say, all right, we're going to be putting in work on these 2 days every week on these issues, so that we are developing the here and now while we are developing the next crop that's going to come behind them. I think that is absolutely essential. Otherwise, we're going to have a vacuum in between there, and the team will suddenly come to naught, and it has to be rebuilt again completely. I think we need to have that bit so they can keep going. Secondly, in terms of the young players, sorry, you were going to ask. Sorry.
No, I thought you'd finished. So I was just sharing with you a comment from Norman Parker, and again, he says 5 areas to look at: participation, pathway, performance, profile, and people. But I put that in there because I thought you would finish. So continue.
No, but I agree with him 100%. So the pathway is important. And he put another thing in there that is important, which is performance, which is why I was saying that when they come here, there must be a plan to address whatever weaknesses they come, and there must be an attempt to measure their progress so that we know they're playing enough cricket in a structured environment, but we're targeting some things where we want to see improvement, so that we know when they leave here, at least some of them should be improving in these areas, and we have a cricketer now who is capable of delivering better performances. And then they can go to a West Indies camp to build on that. So, but a camp alone has proven to be completely ineffective. Let me give an example. I was very excited when I first saw Rashada Williams, because she had this tendency to hang in there and treasure her wicket. But now Rashada Williams is like all the other West Indies players, other than Hayley Matthews and Stephanie Taylor. She's averaging under 20 in both types of cricket. Now, again, I cannot accept that all of these players are at fault. It has to be something about the structure and the system that is saying that they don't have the pathway, the facility to improve their performances. And I'm suggesting to get them to play more cricket by bringing them to established leagues at the expense of the West Indies Cricket Board and of the territorial boards, so that because it is unfair for them not to have any pathway, as I just described to you with the boys, where they have under 15, under 17, under 19 tournaments that are funded, and they get to play that cricket and to develop their game. But just one more thing to go, as I said, to go back now to what you were saying earlier about the pathway from youth up. I'll give you an interesting story about something that actually happened to me recently. I have a slightly different view about the development of cricket. You're quite right. If the numbers work in terms of 20 in every school, I'm somewhat pessimistic of that happening for all the reasons you've said. There's a stigma, there's a problem in the schools, etc., in getting those numbers. What I suggested was this, and I did something privately.
That's why I cut it in half after I said 20. I threw it right.
Yeah, no, let me tell you what I did. I actually called up, and I'll call his name, Richard Clark, who you keep talking about development. And something interesting has happened with Richard Clark, right? I just want to read something for you. Richard Clark was the head coach of Barbados under 15 team. And in Guyana, the Barbados team came third in 2015.
This is women you're talking about?
This is boys. I just want to.
Boys, okay.
This is important for me to make the point I'm making. Okay. They came second in Grenada in 2016. They were champions in Barbados in 2017 and champions in Jamaica in 2018. This is under Richard Clark. And they came second in Antigua in 2019. And Richard Clark's reward for those excellent performances was that he was made assistant coach in Grenada in 2022. I don't know that you did more than that for winning, but in 2022 they won. He's also won the West Indies women's tournament with the Barbados team back in 2008 or something like that as head coach. I say just to make the point that I'm convinced he's very good at developing young players. And so I went to him and I said to him, look, and I was born in a neighborhood where he coaches in the city of Barbados. And it's a very densely populated area. And I said, look, if we can't get enough players from your school, what would you say to me going and get some funding so that you can then draw players from this area to come to Passage Road? Because you have more to draw from than any given school. In the neighborhood where he works, there are young people out there who attend probably 10, 12, 14 different schools. So you have a much denser population to draw from. And recently there was a competition in Barbados where they were mandated to each have, I think, one girl on the team. And I said, get hold of those girls, bring them there. And so you have a collection of girls learning at an early age in that environment. So it's not a school, but it's the same principle that you get them at an early age, you introduce them to the game. And I suggested to him, simply because he was no longer working for the BCA. And we should do the same thing in let's say 4 or 5 more areas equally congested. And what that also does is it solves the problem of these children having to travel many miles to come to Kesler, for instance, to train. They simply learn the game in their area, and they learn it around their peers, their friends. So they all work together and they learn. I think that's an opportunity. So it would be a club thing rather than a school thing. So I suggested this to him, and I went away to look at it to come back. And when I called him back, he said to me that I had an interesting phone call because I mentioned this to somebody at the BCA. I said, what was this phone call? He said, well, the BCA called me and said to me they wanted me to start working with girls here at my location, which is pretty much what I was suggesting to him. So somebody seems to have got wind of it, and I hope that it actually takes him. But I think that's the way it has to be done, because I don't think you're going to get sufficient numbers in a single school, but in a densely populated area, you can get that 20 persons you're looking for, and I think even more, maybe 30. And the thing that I think as a coach myself that works well is that you're playing with people from your neighborhood, and so you're comfortable in that environment with your friends, and they'll encourage each other. I think that's a way to start a game. So it doesn't matter if it's in a school or if it's in the club environment. The point is you have young people in a structured environment learning the game in a fun way, and that is essential.
Yeah, and Dayton, I don't have a problem with that at all. I use the school as one example. In fact, you could attack it from both angles.
Yeah.
But when I was in Bermuda in the mid-1990s, Bermuda had vibrant cricket and football programs. And while both sports were played competitively in schools, especially at the primary level, the real foundation of those sports was really the clubs.
Yeah.
So I've seen that work as well. I like the community aspect better than even the club. I know some clubs in Barbados are doing junior programs for boys, but
Right.
But you talk about the schools, I was simply looking at an easy target, what really you have some ability to control. Because there is that stigma, and I thought that's where you were going. The other elephant in the room, if you want to call it that, which I will let Basil address. And also I would like him to share a bit about how it's done in the US. I don't think you've got a lot of insight into that. I don't think I'm mistaken when I said that the US juniors caused a bit of embarrassment to the West Indies juniors last year or year before last. So we want to hear from Basil on that. But before that, I want to get Terry in on his favorite topic.
Philip,
Yeah.
Just before you go off, I just want to make one more point about this stigma idea. As you know, I'm a football coach, and we started a girls program in a place called Orange Hill in Barbados. And that's why I'm now hooked on the idea of neighborhood sport. All of these young ladies, because they are all friends, a few of them came out, and then all the rest came out of curiosity. And we built a program there, which now is very vibrant and has quite a number of young ladies who get quite upset if we miss a practice day. They are very committed now to playing, but because they're all friends, they all live in the same neighborhood, they're close. They feed off each other, and I found that worked very, very well as an alternative to going to the schools. That was just my point.
Yeah. Terry, your favorite topic, camps.
Yeah, well, that's not my favorite topic, but anyway, right. They just said that camps are ineffective, but they are ineffective because they are just, it's like daycare really. because, you know, people are just going there because. If you go to a camp, it has to have some sort of idea, some sort of goal, some sort of objective that you want to achieve by the end of the camp. However, it cannot be anything technical then to go into play in a pressure situation in actual games. That is madness. That will never work. It will work today, it will work tomorrow. I once heard the court say that so-and-so person was getting out the same way, but we were working at that in the camp, and the camp was 2 weeks. And the person is in the 20s. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like they're in the 20s. And the camp is 2 weeks. So you can try to get something out of a man in 2 weeks that he had for 15 years. So my thing is, when you call, if you're going to use the camps in areas where you're going to be working on specific things, not to then to be going into a tournament, but to be keeping people, making people getting better and working on technical issues and that sort of thing. Camp is fun, right? Good camp setting, got your best players or the emerging players and your work. That is fine. But if you're going to tell me that that you can hold a 2-week camp before West Indies play India at Kensington, right? And you're going to try to see if you could get the nut girls from, you know, to value the wicket or stop playing, cross the ball or anything like that for those 2 weeks, and then expect that when she gets against India that she will not do it, then the camp is rubbish, really. And that is my problem with the camps. Not that camps can't work.
Yeah.
I think he's talking
Any
about
camp,
timing of the.
right.
Correct.
Any camp prior to a tournament must be more tactical than technical.
Exactly.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it cannot be anything technical, right? I mean, I know we got a lot of science now and stuff in sport, but you know, if you do your research, you will see that there's they're still trying to figure out how you can break a bad habit, how much time it will take to break a bad habit. Those things, you know, people try. Like in basketball, what we try to do is try to hide it. We don't try to repair it, right? So, you know, there's the things that you can do.
So you take track of the game in the last 2 minutes, so you don't get a shock attack.
Right. or you know the person don't go left, so you're putting on the right side all night. Right? You know, those are things that you can do. You hide it. You hide the fact that he got a impediment. But I mean, it's not as easy in cricket because you only take one ball to get out. So the thing is, if we can use the camps, but we could as Dylan rightly said, it got to be more like tactical and
that's why Terry, against basketballers, you know, I don't watch a game unless I hear it, always from the losing team. So what are you going to do, you know, to stay in this series? Well, we're going to go and watch some film. Tactical, right, Dayton?
Yeah. Well,
watch film and see what.
Here's how you can use a camp technically, right? You can do some technical work with the guy for 2 weeks, but when he goes back to his territory, there must be follow-up on that so that he can start working with what he just learned to make it now habit that this is what he does.
And not only that, gentlemen, he also needs to play then at that lower level so that he can focus on making those adjustments when he's under less pressure. He's under less pressure for 2 reasons. He's not in the limelight where he may lose his test play or his first class play even.
Right.
Already above that level, which is where he's playing test cricket.
And he has fewer eyes on him.
Therefore, he fewer eyes on him, but also he's naturally above that level. So he's facing Dyson Smith and Hartley Reid and Terry.
Easy going.
So therefore, he's not as likely to get a good ball and get up. So you can focus on working on those weaknesses. You'll notice a lot of and this relates mostly to, well, it relates to both women and men, because you're saying the women are not getting enough cricket, Dyson. But the men, the cricket is there, but a lot of them don't want to play. You know, so
same result. Look, I'll tell you something that happened to our cricket recently that I think is wonderful. And you're aware of it. Shea Hope came home recently and played in the local tournament. Made about 10,000 runs in 4 innings. Just an exaggeration. But the point was, I think it is wonderful that the players playing against him now come up against a player who's a really successful international player in one-day cricket. and
Right.
understand that this is the level they have to reach to get there. I have to be able to bowl at people like this. And by the way, that's one of the things that our cricket is missing.
Yeah.
Our local players don't get the opportunity to play against players of that level. Too often they're touring around the world playing in other leagues.
Mhm.
And you know, they did before we bring Basil in, we'll be on that same theme, showing the parts again of playing a lot of cricket and playing at various levels. The same Shea Hope. I mean, I think you know it growing up in Bang Hall.
Yes.
So I was at another game on Saturday, and then I kept checking the score. I actually had the live scorecard. And at one point I checked and Shea Hope was batting. And I kept thinking, if only, if only, if only. And then I checked and realized that Shea Hope was out. I said, okay, the guy's got a chance. But even prior to that, when Empire batted, they were what, 12 for 4. And listening to the commentator, how he described all 4 wickets. But he said that when, I don't remember the analogy he made, if it was like winning lotto or something, but the guys on the field, the Pickwick guys, carried on, did Dixie when they got Ross and Chase out. Because he too, well, with the same flair as a Shea Hope, too has done well for Bar. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, that may have been the first time that he got out in the matches that he played in that T20 competition.
Right.
So the point I'm making is that when these guys come back to play at that level, and the same would apply to the girls, they've got the respect of the others. The others can learn from them, and they too have a chance then to put things into their game that they can't possibly just put in for the first time in Test cricket. Basil.
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. I agree that. I mean, I grew up in a house with a father who, after he retired, played, still continued to play club cricket for more than 10 years after he retired. And one of the things guys who played against him and played with him would say, just being on the same field with Butcher, if I was a bowler and I got a bowl to Butcher, I got an understanding of how good I had to bowl if I want to get to the next level, because Butcher wasn't giving me no quarters. And one of the things he did after the day's play, he would sit down with players and discuss, so they could come and ask him, Mr. Butcher, what do you think about Baba? And he could give them advice so they could implement that into the game going ahead. But in terms of the camps, I agree, and I said this in one of the groups, that the West Indies board has been pouring a lot of money into these camps. And in my view, it's been a waste of money and time, because if you do not have follow-up in the territories, you're wasting money, because you could jump up and tell us how much camps you're bringing these guys to on gals. Because I know players personally in Guyana who have been to a zillion West Indies women's camp and no iota of improvement, because when she goes back to the Guyana, she does not have somewhere to work on those skills, etc. Now, the other thing about the camps too, is if you got 30-something women come to the camp, how much one-on-one are they going to be able to get in the camp, right? She had some technical things, because a friend of mine who's a coach and her friends would send me the clips, and I would give him advice to pass on to her, and times I've spoken to her. Now, these were some 101 things that should have been corrected years ago. But she's going to all these camps, even played for the West Indies, without these things being corrected. So my whole thing is, you got to have the system in place in the territories that is going to follow up the continued development of what you do in the camp. Because if you don't do that, you're wasting money at these camps.
And there must be that one-on-one work.
Money.
Yeah, there must be that one-on-one work that you talked about.
Yes, yeah, and that's why I have proposed in a simultaneous thing like you were talking about, and probably add this to it, that even at the international West Indies level within the team, because I use the NBA analogy. NBA basketball players used to play 3 and 4 years before they could come out of college. So they got a lot of development in the college. So when they came to the pros, these guys were pretty much ready to play professional basketball. Now guys play 1 year and come to the pros, they got a lot of development to do. So what has happened in all NBA franchises? They now have a specific department what they call player development. When we watch the NBA game, we see like 3 rows of coaches. All them coaches that sit behind the bench are all developmental coaches, right? So they understood these guys were no longer coming NBA ready. So they instituted a system. And you see that across all professional leagues in the States, in the NFL, even NFL has the same thing. So I was saying at the West Indies level, we need to have a development batting coach, development fast bowling, spin bowling, wicket keeping. These guys will just be doing the development work, no tactical. They're dealing with technical. The other coaches, the batting bowling coach, they're dealing with the tactical. And then you have the same type of coaches in every territory. So when a guy goes back home or a gal goes back home, she or he will be working on those things with those coaches as well as the franchise level players in those territories. Because I asked the question, we like to throw up, this guy's going to be the batting coach, this guy's being the bowling coach. What kind of training have these guys done beyond doing level 3? Level 3 is like going to medical school. You do the general thing, but then you're gonna specialize. You have to go and do your residency in the specialty in which you practice.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
So you can't just do, because I did level 3. Level 3 is doing a jack of all trades, but a master of none. Now, if I want to be a fast bowling coach, I have to go and educate myself beyond level 3 about the biomechanics and all those various things that entail fast bowling. Similarly, as a batting coach, etc. I remember the last Indian fast bowling coach on the Sastry. He retired at 28. He was a fast bowler because he wanted to get into coaching. And he said one of the things he did, he went and studied fast bowling, all the science and so on and so forth. We don't have those resources. And I asked the current president when I saw him in Florida, I said, and he said, no, we don't have enough coaches. But then on the other hand, he backslapped all these guys who have been level 3. So my question, if we are training level 3s in the Caribbean, and the president of the board says they got a lot of level 3s, he won't put the coach of first class team, we have to question what is the education process in those level 3s, because as a level 3 coach, you are trained to coach elite cricket teams. So if you come through that and you do not have the understanding and the wherewithal, how to not coach an elite cricket team, we got to question the education process.
Basil, you made a point there.
I want to say one thing before you go there. After that.
Yeah, but go ahead. Yeah, I was simply going to tell a little story to back up what you said.
There are coaches that can pass a coaching certification.
Mm-hmm.
We have about 40 level 2 coaches in Barbados,
Mm-hmm.
right? Basketball, and none of them can coach. None of them don't coach a team. Any of them don't coach a team. They can't. They don't know how to set up a program. They don't know how to, and they would have done level 1 or level 2, right?
Mm.
So I'm saying a fella could be, be smart enough to pass an exam, right? I may do 2 little practice plans or something and be able to pass. But then you really got to learn to coach. And I use myself as that example because when I first started coaching, it was my way or the highway. But then after a way, after a time, you understand that is not all a coaching is about, right?
Let's not leave our viewers in the wilderness too long.
Okay.
We got Ian Ford, who has been listening very attentively, and he said, "Good night, gentlemen. Leighton Smith, your stats are correct about Coach Richard Clark. He is an excellent coach and gentleman. My son was part of the 2017 and the 15 regional tournament, which was a very successful tournament for him and Barbados. Yes, I also know how the Good League coach ended, which is very surprising. I think that's in reference to what you said about being downgraded. And Norman Puckering, I think he's making a comment here about the coaching, about the camps. If conducted properly, a lot can be learned. More about awareness, planning, motivation, team bonding, and to actually get some net practice before traveling. You notice he didn't say anything about technique and the technical aspects. So you're all on the same page here. Hartley, before Hartley falls asleep, let's get him in.
You're muted, Hartley. You're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. There
Really, we
isn't
like
much
to hear, but we prefer to hear you.
the technical aspects in which I just heard the coaches, whether the basketball or cricket or football. I am not going to get into that because all they have identified is where the bosses of the cricket have fallen down. Because you cannot have such qualified and trained people within the system and still your product is what you're having. That means that if it were a business, the directors would have been removed, the manager, the CEO, everybody would have gone because it is clear that you cannot. They are finding it very difficult to utilize what they have. And this is what we have here in our region. You cannot have, and we keep calling Richard Clark, Richard Clark, Richard Clark. But then the BCA got rid of Richard Clark. It's clear that something has gone wrong. His track record is I shall repeat, nobody can compete with him in this region. Nobody can compete with his successes, can compete with who he worked with. We just, yesterday, we saw a young lady making her debut in Barbados, a 40-year-old young girl, Tristan Herbert Mears. Richard Clark started with her at 4 years old. 4 years. People are saying you can't teach people at this. Listen, you can teach at any age. The thing is simple. If you do not know how to teach, you will never get what you want conveyed because you do not know how to get it over. Similarly, here in this region, we have right now, we have a new president, new vice president, but same old board. Because if you look at the board of education, not a soul has changed. Only 2 positions, but nobody has changed. So what are we going to do? Basil, tell me, what are we going to do with the same old people that who failed? They're going to come now to do what? To fail again?
I have something I want to say quickly because I don't want to let this pass. Because as we were saying earlier about the environments that all of us here grew up in terms of cricket, how much cricket was played and so on and so forth. We're in a now more professional world cricket environment, right? Now through sports science and all that, we understand athletic development models, how you develop elite athletes, all the various components that you need to have working in synergy to develop elite athletes. So I am saying, I made a proposal several months ago, saying, look, using an athlete development model that I use when I work with any athlete, that you got strength, speed, stamina, what we call mobility or flexibility, nutrition, the mental part, and the skills and style, right? Now, we have this model. Let's start at the club level, for example, or the juniors. You start to implement pulling from all of those components to the youngster, just what the little information to the youngster as they coming up like on the 13s and so on, filtering these little information, all these components. And it becomes more intense as they go up the levels. Because when we look at on the 15s, and I'll give you this experience, I was doing some interviews. My friend coaches a lot of youth teams in the US. And I developed a online cricket coaching skill development program, right? Which would complement the stuff the youngsters would do with their coaches. So I was calling them to interview them, to ask them, what would they look for in such a program? I'm not going to assume for them. I wanted to hear it from the players themselves. And these are 15-year-olds and so on. And one of the questions I asked them was about their game, what they need to work on. And what was really heartening was to hear youngsters could tell me about their games at 15 years old, where the areas they feel they need to work on to get better. I spoke to a friend of mine who coaches similar age youngsters in Guyana, and I asked him, can youngsters in Guyana be so eloquent about their games? And he said no. And I was telling these youngsters in the United States, I say, you know, your peers in the Caribbean cannot talk about their game like you. And they were like, really, coach? I say, yes, they can't talk about their games. And that's because these youngsters, even though it's cricket, but they're exposed to that athletic development model in different sports here in the United States, that those things are part and parcel of your development, that they bring it to when they play cricket. And we talk about all these issues, but I would ask the West Indies board, what is the development model we have to develop a cricketer, to bring a cricketer from under 13 to be a world-class player? What is the model are you using?
That will be a very short conversation.
Guys, before I ask everyone to give their wrap, so to speak, I want to throw something to Dayton especially, and possibly maybe to Hartley, but Dayton more so, but yes, Hartley as well. I'm not so sure. Basil and Terry can chip in if they have had that experience. But I know Dayton was a director of Cricket West Indies, and I know Hartley is a member of the board of management of Barbados Cricket Association. Not so sure you ever sat at West Indies level, Hartley. Have you?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay. But the question goes out to Dayton, and you two can chip in at the level in which you operate. There was an incident which I won't go into too much details about a few weeks ago, where a senior administrator in cricket made the comment. Unfortunately, it was an unfortunate misunderstanding type situation, where he made the point that he doesn't operate in chats. And it set me thinking, not to be judgmental, but it just set me thinking. So Dayton, to what extent do administrators at that level, you're on Cricket West Indies as a director or whatever you are on the board, to what extent do you guys listen to and give any serious consideration or respect to the opinions of John Public?
Well, I don't think you have to be on the board to be able to answer that question. I'll take it from two directions. One is, I think all of the cricket fans in the West Indies are always asking, when are we going to hear this, or when are we going to be told that the availability of information that they would like is not there. Now, we all know there are issues that will be discussed in any board setting, not only cricket, that are confidential, that ought not to be shared. And I would support that 100%. So if, for instance, we were having a discussion about whether Philip Hackett should be fired, that is not for public consumption, and it should never be, for obvious reasons. However, I should be able to go to any website of any sporting organization and answer the question that was just asked by my good friend, Mr. Butcher. I should be able to go on our website and see what are the structures in place for development. It should clearly point out what the pathways are, and that's basically what communication is about. If we sit at a board level and we make decisions and we keep it among ourselves, and then we only announce one day that, okay, we're going to appoint Philip Hackett as captain, we don't say anything else about what we're doing, then you cannot get buy-in from your public in any endeavor, not just cricket. There must be some sharing of information in order for you to get some buy-in. And I think in any good organization, there should be feedback structures, not at the board level. I don't think that's the right place for it. But I ought to be able to, through some communication method, to go to the CEO of cricket in Barbados and say, I have this concern. And that there should be a way for that concern, if it is thought worthy to go further up, for that concern to be passed through some channels to get to the level of the BCM board, who, if they see it fit, should then communicate it to the West Indies Cricket Board. Similarly, there should be a channel by which I should be able to communicate concerns to the West Indies Cricket Board via their website or some other channel that you create. And those channels should be managed very much like you have a PR person in some organization, so that the person managing those channels should be bringing to the attention of the decision makers, look, Philip Hackett has raised this issue, and I think it has some import for cricket or for the public. I think you might want to have a look at this. So I think that is the way it should be done. There should be formal communications channel. And you're a teacher. There ought to be formal channel by which I can communicate with the school if I have a concern for my child. And a formal channel by which I should be able to communicate with the Ministry of Education. And the same thing should happen in cricket or in any business. Those formal channels should be available to the entire public.
It's interesting you mentioned schools, because I do know, I'm not making a judgment as if it's good, bad, or indifferent, but I do know that many schools have moved towards creating chat groups. Well, obviously they will have chat groups that are only for staff members, and then there'll be some for specific staff members who are dealing with certain, projects or whatever. The ease of communication. This is not the good morning, how you doing, and send out posters type of chat group. I'm talking about where you have, a group of people. The ease of communication. They use the technology and so on. But many schools have also moved towards having chat group that includes parents.
Parents, right? Yeah.
Not that any teacher is going to be amused by a parent coming into his or her classroom and telling him or her how to teach.
No, should never happen.
The wise teacher knows that it does not hurt to get a feel for how the parents are thinking.
Agreed.
But Philip,
if you are up there, and everybody else is not only down there, but you don't even know what they're thinking. I don't know how effectively you can lead in that situation.
No, you can't.
Philip, there is no way in the 21st century with technology that you can now communicate with everybody from as far away as China in a split second. Right now we have Brazil, thousands of miles from us, and he is talking to us at the same time. And you are saying that you have chats set up where 100, 200 views, different views are coming to you. And you are going to say that you are not going to communicate. Philip, that is sign of madness. Utter madness. Because it is simple. You, right now, in the Barbados, the BCA, where the chats have the views of people who play cricket, people who love cricket, people who like cricketers, all kinds of people that are involved in cricket. You have their views and they suggest. All it calls for you to do is to filter it. And like anything else, the trash you throw away, and the good things you keep. But you mean nothing. You're going to stay quiet. You're going to stay mute, and indeed, you're going to you can pass an edict that your board members should not communicate. But if you don't communicate, all right, then I can live with that. But get your PR person. Get your PR person to be a member of that group, so that whatever is raised there, and then the board sits and discuss. But then let me hear something. But for sure, as it stands now, the Cricket West Indies and the territories have failed and are failing their members. But then again, having said that,
and then they wonder why nobody comes to Kensington or to the various grounds.
But the answer to nobody, because they are private they are private organizations. They don't answer to anybody.
I throw this out to anybody, Basil, anybody. Is there a possibility, or is it even desirable, that one day we move towards a cricket structure in the region where John Public, and even if not every member of John Public, but representatives of John Public are in decision-making position in electing a board.
I think they should have something of that sort to help the constituents, the fans have a.
Because what happened, Basil, they will flood the chats for sure because they want.
No, well, I think if you look at a board and you're looking to have a representative board of all your constituents and so on, yeah, I don't see why you cannot have some a person as a represented constituents of the fans, because at the end of the day, the fans are whom bring the money to the sport. Without the fans, there's no sport, no money, no nothing, right? So I think that's something. But I would say one of the issues in West Indies cricket, I always like to go back to the foundation. You look at why this board was founded in the first place. It was never an all power. It was founded to pick West Indies teams. Essentially, that was its role. The territorial boards were the powers, right? The board was picked and the members came from the territorial boards to the board. And that culture continues to permeate to this day because it's still essentially the same structure. We have not having essentially a fundamental change in the structure of governance of West Indies cricket. So that culture still permeates. That I have been a virulent critic of this board for their poor PR. I mean, some of the things, maybe it's because I live in the United States, some things that are 101 basic, they hold on to like it's the state secret, right? And then leave to people like me and you and all of us here to speculate up and down. And now today, because of social media, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's opinion is seen to the world. I mean, I have Facebook, but I primarily go on Facebook to the West Indies fans group because I get entertained with some of the crap these guys talk, right? But they would speculate, and there are times because I know the facts, I would correct them and say, no, that's not what's going on. But if West Indies board, and that might be merely because I know somebody who knows somebody to tell me, right? But if the West Indies board did their job, they would be we wouldn't have all these speculations. I give a simple one. You remember when Hetmyer got brought back into the team last year against India, right? Phil Simmons in the press conference, and the reporter asked Phil Simmons about Hetmyer. Phil Simmons, well, obviously, he got some, because of Hetmyer's intransigence, you could see he wasn't too happy, and he said, I'm not going to talk about this. He's not in the ODI. And I'm like, wait a minute. All you had to say, Phil Simmons, he has been brought back into the fold to work out, to get himself in shape, to take the fitness test, to make the T20 team. How hard was that? And then funny, 2 days later, Pooran says exactly that. So it's those kinds of things I see over and over. And I know the CEO even has admitted in your group that, yes, he admits that their PR is not up to par. But he admits that, but yet still we don't see an improvement. And we've been hearing this year after year after year, like it's an old boys club. And if you don't know somebody who could know somebody that tell you something, we would all be blind. I mean, I'm not going to repeat certain things on this show, right, for obvious reasons, but I have been told some things that if the general public was to find out, they would, especially because the point that Dighton brought up the other day about insularity, if the general public was to find out, there would be a virtual rebellion, because the insularity is so rife that if you come from a certain territory and your guys are in high position, you get a chance to get a job. And as I posed the question the other day, the question should be, Well, if your guy wasn't there, why could you get a chance to get the job? That just shows the patronage system of West Indies cricket from its inception. It still continues to this day, right? So we have to have a fundamental change in the governance structure and who are represented on the board, etc. That's my long-winded response.
No problem. Listen, I'm going to give it to you guys a chance to wrap up, so to speak. I think some of our viewers may be looking to go to bed now, as interesting as the conversation has been. But before we do that, we'll start with the basketballer because he's probably still hoping to get to training before it ends and get a few bunks of few last balls. So we'll start with him. But before we get to that, on that subject of insularity, now you see it in and among your people, your friends, your social groups. And why is that an issue? Why is that an issue? Because you will say, well, the guys, let's say Hartley is in a chat, Dayton is in a chat, they don't pick teams. But even if I just use those two examples, Dayton was a director at one point. Dayton is an ordinary guy like the rest of us, loves cricket like the rest of us, played cricket like the rest of us. Didn't play test cricket like any of us. None of us did. But the point is, he's an ordinary guy who sat on the board of Cricket West Indies. Hartley Reid is an ordinary guy, lawman, who sat on the board of the Barbados Cricket Association and who managed Barbados teams. Terry Innes is an ordinary guy, civil servant like anybody else, who coaches Barbados teams. What I'm saying is that the guys in the chat who might say certain things, and you figure, well, it don't really matter because he ain't the decision maker. But this is where the decision makers are chosen from. Occasionally, bring in a foreign coach. But I don't know, I don't recall in my time, maybe you can remind me, if you've ever brought in a foreign president, or foreign treasurer, or foreign director.
No.
These are the real decision makers, Sometimes the coach just does what he's told. and he operates with the limited or no budget they give him. So the coach, So I'm saying I set that foundation because then I hear in my moving around, guys who I may have that respect for because they may have played first class cricket and therefore you want to respect the cricket thing. You may have heard them do some commentaries, but you want to add further respect. But when people of that nature are obviously biased, you get a guy like Athanaze who scored from memory 2 first-class centuries, both this season, who, as far as I'm aware, could not have faced a Kemar Roach very often, or would not have scored runs against a Kemar Roach or a Joseph, or even a Jason Holt. These are our best bowlers, aren't they? Best bowlers. And Jason Holder, at one point, might still be, I haven't checked recently, is rated he's certainly rated among the top all-rounders in the world, and very often has been the top all-rounder. And he's an average 40, so his bowling had to pull a lot of sway. Our best bowlers, he has not yet faced and scored runs against in regional cricket. But he gets called up to South Africa for reasons best known to selectors, maybe for some experience. And we have responsible people arguing that he should walk into the team. That frightens me, gentlemen, because it is from these type of people, don't want to call names, right? But it's from these type of people that selectors are chosen.
Correct.
See why the insularity is there. And that guy had no difficulty saying that in a chat with over people.
Nope. Even when challenged with the actual stats, etc., he still held on because he's his countryman.
I was even going to go and fly out there to see him. That's what he said.
No, but then
you think West cricket is in crisis? West Indies cricket is in crisis.
But then too, Phil, remember one of the test matches with India is being played in Dominica. So the selectors may be under some immense pressure to pick young Athanaze to make his debut in front of his home crowd, right? It's even
more frightening when you think this applies to the women, because with the men, in some cases, 6, maybe half dozen
Mhm.
in some cases. But when it comes, in other words, if you may pick a guy, drop a guy averaging 29 and pick one averaging 28. But we don't have that luxury in the women's cricket.
No, I mean, I raised this in the
You call
group
it the luxury.
before
Uh-huh.
about Shadeen Nation, who's
Uh-huh.
been playing for all those years, and look at her average, and she still is in the teams, right? You know,
I think
Campbell from
They've had that year
Guyana.
last year they never had before.
Yeah, Campbell is another one from Guyana. I mean, both me and my friend, my friend who's a coach, you know, we follow women's cricket closely.
Uh-huh.
From watching this regional tournament, he's been saying to me vociferously, Stephanie Taylor and Campbell should not walk back into West Indies team based on how they've been performing in this tournament. I mean, at this level, I don't know what's going on with Stephanie Taylor, because I know she is a top-notch player. But to see her struggle, I mean, mightily struggle against some of the most mediocre bowling you would ever see is great, is serious a concern. Similar with Campbell, you know, and these are the women that we got to go and put out to go and compete against the Australians and the English and etc. And then we have people with some unreasonable expectations when they get trashed. Well, what happened to them? The coach is this, the coach is that. But if they were watching what was going on, and I see a lot of people are watching, because there are times I sign on, I see on the YouTube over 1,000 people viewing, which is a nice thing to see, that kind of numbers of viewership to the women's games. But those of us here who have seen women's cricket know those standards are pathetic, to say the least.
Terry Ennis,
Yes.
the man
Well-
who played the combined schools and was the only player from the squad who did not make the Barbados under 19.
That's the only player.
Not got no
That's, I could go down infamy.
And he's not got no rating.
Yeah. I only heard
His
a few
loss
years ago.
was the gain of basketball.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I only heard a few years ago that I drove the short stick, because apparently they had 8 more people from CP, right? And they would have made none. So it was, don't worry with the night fella.
So CP was producing too many good cricketers. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess that was credit Mr. Who was that? Pedro Hines?
Pedro Hines, yeah.
Pedro Hines. What's become of
So,
him?
but I
They.
listen, women's sports, we gotta understand the vagaries of women's sports. It is not well patronated in some cases. It is not well, the compensation packages are not like the main. But in a situation where viewership and TV rights and stuff will be your biggest source of income, you got to understand that you have to do a little bit more work with the women than you have to do with the men, right? So the women have to be better at all aspects of the game, right? So if we don't put the things in place, we are not putting things in place with the men, and we put in a little less with the women, we are not going to go anywhere. I mean, because we just talk about a lot of communications. It shows a real serious arrogance on the authorities side, right? Because they don't really care, or they see the problems, but they don't know how to fix them, so they don't want to hear it. So that, anybody question them, because they really don't know how to fix it. I feel it in my heart that they don't know how to fix it, because we all see what the problems are. I mean, I'm a basketball, I can see the problem. So, I mean, we all see what the problems are. So to fix them, to me, is the problem.
Yeah.
I think people like Dayton, who has a real good grasp of the cricket and administration and on the coaching side and stuff, you could have some learn some valuable things from him. I'm not saying everything because he went to Harrison College, but I'm saying you can learn something, some things you could get from him, right?
Envy, Dyson.
But but what we lack is foresight and innovation. We can't do the same things that we were doing in the 80s and expect that we will get results in 2023. That will never work. So and that's where we are. I just real sorry because I feel it within my heart. I know, I play cricket first before I play basketball. And I can tell you that when West Indies is winning, the entire Caribbean is the boy. I mean, like, people is got a different perspective and a different feeling when West Indies is winning.
Mhm.
That's why people ain't going to cricket no more, because they're upset we get beat.
Exactly.
Right? So if we really care about our people, or if we really care about the cricket, we will really try to get it where it's supposed to be, and not just become president and then all of my countrymen get a job and the cricket going all down the withdrawal. That's really my piece there.
I just want to add something quickly.
Okay, okay, you want to
I want
do
all of you guys to take a look. Go to the Windies cricket website and find where they have their mission statement. That will give you a clue as to why we are a joke as we are. Because I did it the other day for a friend in the US who wants to write a mission for the US thing. And when he read it, he could not believe what he was reading. So I would advise you to go and read it. Because this is one of the reasons why every president comes in trying to reinvent the wheel, because there's no mission. West Indies board has no proper mission and goals set out. So everybody comes in, because then what's supposed to happen is like a relay. Next guy come in, you got to move towards this mission. We don't have a proper mission. Go and check it out.
And this is why, I mean, if you care to check it out, no, and read it before we
Okay.
go. Fine.
I will, and I'll read it out to you guys.
Yeah, well, what Hartley is doing his rap, and in fact, Hartley, when you were speaking earlier, about changes being needed, I was thinking along the same lines as Basil, that you can change people, but it doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to change. But don't let me put words in your mouth or change. Share some final thoughts with us, Hartley.
Well, where women cricket is concerned, fortunate enough for us, as I stated at the beginning, we have now a new president. But ironically, we still have the same person running the women's cricket that was doing it since eons ago. And for some reason that only the madman would know, we cannot understand that we are failing under the lead selector, because our lead selector is our primary person in cricket. And if our selectors do not do a search within the territories to find who are the best, to bring them to camp practice, I don't care what you call it, we are producing then what we are seeing, or what we saw this year, early this year, and last year. I said it back then, and I'm going to say it again. We have to find a new person to run the affairs of the women cricket, so that we can get the best players at the time, to add to the ones that we don't want to get rid of. Because you all made mention of Stephanie Taylor. Stephanie Taylor is washed out now. And we are talking about what used to happen. Stephanie is not even a shadow. She's not even the shadow of who she was. And Campbell has not made 20 runs in the whole season.
That's not true, Hartley. Not true. She's
Well,
not
listen,
done
Dalton,
well, but she's made more than 20.
You know, we laugh, you people. I said 20, you want 20. Okay, she made 24 again.
Oh.
You make torture.
Feel that.
Yes, she's not done very
And
well.
all I am saying is that you are talking about a person, and Dr. knows, well, I was in the place in 2011,
Correct.
and they were in the place making sport. They don't make any, they don't produce. She's an excellent wicketkeeper. I know, but we don't know. She's not even keeping wicket. I saw some other young lady keeping wicket, and she up on the field running about. We have to get rid of the people who call themselves in charge, because they're not leaders, they are in charge. And all the charging they want is, if it were still a policeman, I would give them a charge sheet. That's all the charge they are. They want getting, say thanks to them and getting them from around the people cricket and bringing new people with a new focus. It's because the insularity, and we kept dancing around the issue of insularity. It is so, to use Basil's word, it is so rife in this country and in this region, insularity, that if we do not get rid of it, our cricket will die. Thank you, my friend.
Dayton, before Basil brings you up, you can have a go.
Okay. Two things I would say. You touched on the idea of spectator involvement or fan involvement in the game. I would suggest some homework for everybody to go and do some research. There are some football teams who have an interesting structure, and I think Barcelona is one of them, where as a fan, you can pay an amount and you'll become a shareholder of the club. Now, the shareholding is very minor, but then when you have, and by the way, it's a very great source of revenue for the club, because when you have 1 million fans, because you can join anywhere. Just think of the West Indian diaspora in New York, in Toronto, anywhere in the world.
Mhm.
They in a structure like that, they can join, so there are funds coming to the club, and you get a little package, you know, a shirt and whatever, but you are an actual shareholder of the club. So you might have a very minor shareholding, but then 1 million of you could be a significant block. So that's something that you should research for, because the whole idea of governance structure and fan involvement is something that I think is an episode in itself, because there's a lot to discuss in that. But I just threw that out there for some research. The second thing is this: if I would like to leave one thought, is this: development is a year-round activity. It is not a 2-week camp. Whatever you learn in a 2-week camp is something that you must be able to build on and to develop further as you in an environment that allows it. Philip, as a teacher, you know, you give a class, a 2-hour class. I come in there and I learn something in that class. I then have to be using that as part of my overall educational development over the course of a term, over the course of a year, over the course of a school life. It has to be things building on each other on a regular, and it can't happen if I have long periods of inactivity, or certainly not any structured activity. So the West Indies Cricket Board doesn't necessarily have to use the ideas that I put forward, but there must be some way in which these players have activities that are structured throughout the year and be involved in playing cricket, because nothing ever learned is useful if you can't put it to work in a real environment. So there must be more developmental activities throughout the year, and there must be ways for them to use what they have learned on the actual cricket field. That's my last thought.
Basil.
Yeah, I just want to read this thing for you guys. It says our mission to lead, inspire, and unite cricket in the West Indies, from thriving grassroots to exciting West Indies teams, ensuring sustainable success. That's our mission. And our vision: West Indies cricket is the heartbeat of the Caribbean, loved by the world. And those two statements.
But that ain't even a good song. You can't hear the song for that.
Huh?
You cannot even write a song with those words.
Right. That, I mean, I had never read this. Is until a friend of mine who working with US cricket asked me to check something, And then he went to the website and we on the phone together, right? And this is a guy who worked at the highest levels of the US government. And he go like, Basil, what the hell is this? I say, you know what? Go to our Cricket Australia, Cricket ECB elsewhere, and find something, some guidance from there, because this is
Empire Cricket Club.
right. I mean,
Philip.
See, Empire probably picked it too. I don't know if you about it.
yeah, I believe this was what the West Indies board. So now I see why we have the issues we have, because if we had a concise mission and vision, every person that comes into office would be guided by that rather than be trying to reinvent the wheel each time. The organization would inculcate that culture and values all the time, because we driving towards we have a vision and a mission we driving towards, following this vision. But we don't have that congruency at all. So that's why we get this, what we got called Cricket West Indies. You know, it starts from there. When I read that, is then I realized why we are where we are today.
And it's interesting that you said that, because women's cricket, where are we? Where
Right.
should we be? How do we get there? And I think, well, we didn't cover those three aspects in any specific order. I think we focus on all three, and we probably spent most time on how do we get there,
Mhm.
having identified where we need to be.
Right.
We are, some may say, the less said about that, the better.
Mm.
Dayton Smith, Terry Ennis, Hartley Reid,
Mhm.
and Basil Butcher Jr., so far away from us, yet ever present with us on a daily basis. Thank you, gentlemen, for participating in what I consider a very intense and interesting discussion. I hope our viewers, even those who didn't comment, enjoyed it as well. I can tell you a few of them stayed, quite a few of them stayed with us throughout. And we haven't had a live show in a little while, but the good news is we're going to have the next two shows I anticipate will be live. We may revisit the issue of women's cricket, getting some other views if we have others available to do that. But certainly we want to get on to the men's game as well, at which point we can easily have you guys back. Well, certainly Dayton, Hartley, and Basil. We'll have Terry back depending on the court or not. Hopefully we get long again. So
I like that too. I like that too, Phil, the live, because I think a lot of times the people outside could bring up points that we may miss, that we could address, because so it's always good to have that feedback from the other folks too. Yes. I wish
Yes.
Western board could have been so see that as a value.
Yeah, but the thing about that is that it's no point having these things and then not allowing for what should I say, exchange. I remember some time ago, at the height of the COVID era, we're always tempted to say during COVID as though COVID is gone.
Right.
But height of the COVID era, where they were doing interviews, where you have to give the question to a particular person, and that person will then relay the question to, and who was it? One of those guys who didn't play. Oh, Evan Lewis scored a century. Battled well. I think he scored a century, but he was our player of the day in a white ball game. And the question I sent was something like this: you have done well in white ball cricket. You continue to do well in white ball cricket. Do you have any intention or any motivation towards maybe, turning your attention to some extent to red ball cricket? And I was told by the person taking the question that wasn't appropriate because we won the game and we want to focus on the positive. I want to any questions and I the view since then.
Oh,
I don't believe you, Philip. Don't do that. I don't believe you.
Oh dear.
Well,
I mean, that's
I've gone
so
for a
fun.
couple of phones since then, but if that happens to pop up in my history, I will share it with you.
I mean, that's so interesting that they didn't see that your question was relevant to the performance, because that would be the typical thing. You're doing so well, because that's a question that the average man in the street or average person in the street was asking.
And as a
Everyone
journalist,
looking all this run,
we
he's
have to
looking for
sometimes
opening batsmen.
the man in the street, because the man in the street doesn't often get the chance to go to an interview.
Exactly.
You know, you ask some questions that are on your mind, yes, but you also got to ask questions that are relevant to the people who watch your show, who read your
Yes.
articles, the people
Yes.
who lay you in the supermarket and in the barbershop. Well, in my case, not the barbershop nowadays.
Mhm.
You need to, so therefore, you ask those questions when you get the opportunity. So if that, so I don't think I asked too many questions, if any, since then.
No, because your question was so relevant, because that was on the lips of many of us. We're looking for an opening batsman, and this guy making all these runs in white ball. Why don't we try him at red ball?
And that was the discussion. So I was trying to find out his level of interest, because if he's not interested, and I think that Lewis and any cricketer with all these what do you call media personnel around them should be able to answer that question without making himself look silly.
Mhm.
But I don't know why people feel sometimes that the players are stupid and they would embarrass them. I think the ones who more embarrass themselves sometimes are the senior people, like the coaches and some of the administrators. I haven't found in West Indies cricket, certainly, too many players saying things that are embarrassing to themselves. Not the vast majority. So I don't know where that fear comes from, but there's this need to protect them. And that's why I like basketball, because the media, they are encouraged and allowed to talk to the players. Do the players say something that sometimes that, but we all human beings. And LeBron James, the late Kobe Bryant, all of them, on the days that they've said something that maybe was from the heart that others may not have liked, but it didn't stop them from being popular sports people, because at the end of the day, people realize it's speaking from the heart. And at the end of the day, people like honesty.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
we just got to learn sometimes to be mature enough to accept genuineness from people.
I think we still lacking in that in the Caribbean. We still a little behind the times there.
Anyhow, that's our show. Thanks for watching. Join us again very soon for another episode of Anything Cricket. Let's talk.